Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. And some, not us, wrote off all the Italian teams yesterday in the Champions League. A stunning comeback in Bergamo from Atalanta. And what a nerveless penalty in the 7th minute of injury time to win it. Was it high foot or low head? They're through. Juve almost joined them 5-2 down going into last night. They pulled it level, doing almost all the work with 10 men before running out of steam in extra time against Galatasaray. It feels right that Vinícius Júnior scored the key goal of the night in Madrid. Benfica had their chances, but Real go through. And our friend Wout Faes almost took PSG to extra time, but didn't get enough Buffon hair on his header. The holders go through. Elsewhere, Cov go 5 points clear in the Championship. We'll do a Premier League preview, answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Lars Sivertsen.
Come on, Max.
And from the Racing Post, Mark Langdon, hello.
Hi, Max.
So good night last night, wasn't it? Let's start in Bergamo with Atalanta 4, Borussia Dortmund 1. Really good game, and decided, Mark, by that penalty. And the head is low and the foot is high. I don't know what to feel. Tell me what to feel.
Well, I think you've transferred. You wasn't in my living room, was you, last night, Max? When I was debate. I don't know why my wife was so interested. Probably because she didn't want it to go to extra time. Yeah, she was adamant that it was an accident and that that therefore really unlucky. And I'm saying it's not in the laws. And so she said, "Well, why are they complaining then?" And I said, "Well, maybe not watching our football." I think I was shouting penalty straight away. There is a definitely dips the head, but certainly not to the extent where Benzabani, when you connect like your studs with like the forehead of an opponent, I think it's very difficult to say that's not a foul. And therefore, if it's a foul inside the penalty box, I think penalty is the right decision. He'd already been booked, so he has to walk. It really hard because literally the last kick of the game. Sometimes people say the last kick of the game, and it's not literally the last kick of the game. This was a brilliant way to finish the game. I think the better team went through. Maybe that's why I'm kind of less bothered by maybe the supposed harshness for Borussia Dortmund. And I did think it was a penalty, but I thought their first half performance warranted them going out, really.
I like the idea that you're such a pedant that when anyone says that was the last kick of the game, you say, "I think you'll find there were actually 8 more touches before the referee blew for full time." And actually, Barry, the penalty itself, when you think about the pressure and you think about the comeback and you think, okay, it's the 7th minute of injury time, there's been such a delay. 2 people have been sent off in the dugout before he gets to take this penalty, and it is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, just smashed it into the top corner. Unsavable if it's on target, and it takes cojones to do that, I suppose. Samardzic, I presume there's the temptation to go for an easier option, because if you do miss, you look like a complete idiot. But it was not quite Panenka idiot, but there are easier ways to take a penalty. So it shows massive confidence on his part. I thought it was a penalty, and I thought it was a lovely way for Rami Bensebaini to finish what was to be one of the all-time worst performances in the history of football. I felt for the guy. He couldn't catch a break at all. He was badly at fault for the first goal. I think the second one took a massive deflection off him. And then he gave away that penalty right at the death, which Dortmund scored and got sent off. So what a night for him. He really was the standout performer for all the wrong reasons. And I'm surprised he even lasted as long as he did. But I agree with Mark. I think the better team probably did go through. And Atalanta will play Arsenal or Bayern Munich. I suspect they may not get any further.
What did you make of it, Lars?
I was surprised because this sort of massive collapse is sort of the bad old Dortmund, and under Kovacs, actually, they've been unusually sort of organized and rational and solid. This is why they've been second in the Bundesliga in spite of actually not being very good. Like, man for man, this is not a vintage, exciting Dortmund generation, but Niko Kovac is a very, competent, solid coach. He's made them hard to beat And in this game, they were not. Like, there was the kind of collapse that you just don't really see coming from them this season. And I think Kovac said after the game that there were moments where we weren't really there. It's like they weren't present mentally, that they made stupid mistakes. And of course, Kobel, the goalkeeper, has accepted blame for the way the last goal went and apologized profusely. It's kind of surprising, I think. It's not really what I was expecting based on the Dortmund games I've watched this season. On the penalty, there's a good sort of thing to remember where it's like, in terms of fouls and yellow cards and red cards, and it's almost like a child's rhyme thing, which is laws of the game. Careless is a free kick, reckless is a yellow card, and dangerous is red. It's careless, reckless, dangerous. That's the way it goes, right? So if it's careless, it's a foul.
Okay,
If
the
it's
things
reckless,
I teach young Ian to be. This is
honestly,
what you please,
careless,
Ian, be these three things for life.
So,
careless,
but it's really
dangerous,
easy to
and
remember.
reckless.
Foul is careless, reckless, dangerous, right? That's the steps you go through. But it also means whenever it's a red card and you hear the co-comment going, yeah, that's a red, that's really reckless, you can be the one asshole in the group that goes, actually, I think you'll find, reckless means something else, Yeah, you can see why I get invited to many parties.
Well, here we go. I was going to say, with Mark saying this is how many touches until full time, and you saying actually that wasn't reckless. God, what a boring set of people we are.
People love it. Me and Lango, we get invited to all the hot places. But I bring this up now because I suspect we're coming back to this subject when we get to the Juventus game. But in this case, anyway, there's absolutely no doubt that what Benzema does is careless. Like, he's no idea where his leg's going. He's just poking it up in the air. And he got a yellow card, which I guess the referee felt it was reckless. And I guess, again, if you poke a leg out behind you and you kick someone in the head, it's fair enough. So I think that's fine. But my main takeaway was that I just didn't really see this coming. And Dortmund fans will say you should see this coming because this is Dortmund. This is the sort of dumb nonsense that we do. But they haven't been more solid this season. They just completely abandoned them on the night.
Mark, there's always a danger of, and Nicky summed this up quite well yesterday, sort of, treating all Italian teams as this sort of monolithic thing, or English teams, and saying this, like Atalanta are not Juventus, they are a different team. They're not Inter Milan. But like, how does it make any difference to Serie A that Atalanta are through? It doesn't make any difference to Juve or Inter, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think probably for the league, I think it does matter. Like, if Juventus would have been the one team through, probably there would have been a section of Italian fans that would have been disappointed that Juve had made it through. It wouldn't be the most popular team in Italy unless you support them, which the big section of the country does. But I think for Atalanta, I think it's great for them, and I do think it helps the league, and it also helps. I'm going to go into another boring subject now about coefficients, but it does. There is something to be said. There is something to be said for the progress. I think that the one thing for me with Italian football is you've seen this Atalanta game that's finished 4-1. Like, Juventus have been involved in two absolutely chaotic games. Inter, conceded 5 goals on aggregate to Bodo. There will still be pundits, particularly from the UK, referencing the sort of dourness and the tactical greatness of Italian football and how they play for 0-0s. And like, it just hasn't been like that for such a long time. And yet that stereotype and cliche just remains. And Atalanta, I think they had when they got rid of Gasperini and replaced him with Juric, that was a mistake. They realised that mistake fairly quickly. I think Palladino is more in keeping with what they want to be, and sort of who they are, and kind of what Gasperini had built before them. And it is a mix of very experienced players, Kolasinac, Zappacosta, players like that. But there are also, in terms of Atalanta, like, got one of the best youth systems in the country, and there probably aren't that many in Italy that can say that really at the moment. They are going through a dry spell, but I think Atalanta try to do things the right way, if that's the right thing to say. And I'm really pleased that they've got through. I do think they'll go out to Arsenal or Bayern Munich. Just the power of those two teams, I think, will make it very difficult. But in Bergamo, they are a completely different beast, and that won't. I suspect that won't be an easy game.
I've just realised that the goal Atalanta scored, the Pasalic header, to put them 3 up. Ben Sebaini was who let him ghost in behind to score that header. So Ben Sebaini was either directly or indirectly responsible for all 4 Atalanta goals.
Is it? I mean, is it at the stage where having a Ben Saimi is a, is it, a bit like when we were talking about Akanji, doing a butcher, having a big bandage on? Was it that level of? It's almost that
look,
level
I
of
think it was just one of those nights. He's clearly a decent player, but nothing went right for him last.
He
night.
had a Wout Faes, and more to come.
More of which anon.
Yes, it's not fair to say Wout Faes had a Wout Faes, but he did have a Wout Faes moment. Juve's comeback, Lars, was great, wasn't it? Like to be 1-0 up and be down to 10 men and then take it to extra time. They were 5-2 down going into this. They got it back to 3 in another 90 minutes and sort of ran out of steam in extra time. They did have one brilliant chance in extra time, but it was a brilliant game.
Yeah, this was another one of those. I think the last week I was on, there was one game I wanted to watch, but there was another one that turned out to be more interesting. I had this experience again. I was sat down. I was like, Real Madrid Benfica is what we're focusing on tonight, but this is where the fun was at. I sensed. And of course, yes, we will praise Juventus, but I have to just say, like, Galatasaray, what are you doing? Like, there was so much of this game where they were just behaving unsensibly. And actually, Victor Osimhen, doing post-match interviews when they won and when he scored the pivotal goal, was saying, like, I have to say, I'm disappointed in the team. Because this was unserious behavior from Galatasaray. They have a 3-goal lead, and they even go up like they're 1 man up for a lot of this game, and they just couldn't put their foot on the ball or stay solid or do any of these sensible things. Like I told you, Max, on the day, I was like, Galatasaray, they do have a collapse in them, and boy did they deliver on that score. And it was just Juventus running out of steam, really, in extra time. You can tell they were just really tired, which is understandable when you play that much of the game with 10 men. And they do deserve a lot of credit for just hanging in there. But again, and I hate that it's me doing this, but I think this game we have to go to ref chat. I mean, I try to avoid the ref chat, but the red card here is very difficult to completely ignore, because I think poor old Lloyd Kelly... if we go back to our careless, reckless, dangerous adage,
he's none of those.
It's careless,
well,
maybe,
is
but
saying,
probably not even that.
Yeah, is the saying, before careless, there's just trying to land on your feet.
Yeah.
Is that the first one of the saying?
So the line that often... Ref, I ask about this sometimes, and the line that keeps coming back to me is that the players have a duty of care to their fellow professionals, and you're responsible for where your limbs end up. But I think that concept comes up against the idea of there are certain physical actions you have to be expected to be allowed to do on a football field, and I feel like jumping is one of them. Like, you don't have a carte blanche to stick your leg out behind you up in the air like Benzemaini does. Like, if you do that and catch someone's head, then, like, I don't feel sorry for you. But Lloyd Kelly just jumps, and like when you jump, you're gonna land somewhere. And in a grass field with 21 other dudes, like occasionally there will be someone where you land. Like this, I don't think there's a way around that.
Actually, Barry, Rory Smith on Match of the Day sort of made quite a good point that VAR means that referees are now just doing everything by the letter of the law, but not in the spirit of the law. And I think most fans watch that decision and just think that isn't fair. Now, I know intent doesn't matter, but it just isn't fair. I don't know if that matters, but like we're all watching it going, you shouldn't get sent off for that, unless you think you should.
I thought he was unlucky. I can see why the ref gave it. Rory Smith makes lots of good points. This is probably another one. I didn't hear him make it, but it does seem unfair. And the ref gave him a second yellow, and then the ref was sent to the screen. And I was thinking, well, VAR can't interfere on a yellow. So apparently VAR were telling the ref that it should have been a straight red and not a second yellow, which would seem even more unfair.
Well, that's what he got, wasn't it?
It was a straight red ultimately, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I would imagine. Oh, you can't appeal, can you, to UEFA? So I would say if that was in the Premier League, it would be overturned. But yeah, he's sunk.
But on a wider point, Mark, I guess that it is about what VAR has done to the laws of the game. I'm not going to say handball, although I just said it. But, that on a wider point, that is an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely think there was... some people moaned about sort of the inconsistency, and you still get inconsistency, but I think there was that spirit of the game, and kind of most people generally, apart from the real bores, of which none of us could claim to be, that would moan about every refereeing decision. It didn't matter whether, if it went for them, they would moan, and then they'd be sort of rowing about if it went against them. And you can never going to stop them people. And I think that VAR was brought in to try to eradicate that. But the people that moan all the time are still moaning all the time. And it's just, for those of us that were kind of just trying to enjoy the football, have now had that ruined by aspects of VAR that we didn't wish to sort of come into the game. On this particular incident, like, I am going to say that you do have to, like, if the VAR thinks that it is a red card, whether Lloyd Kelly's getting sent off or not, he still has to go through those steps, because it might be an extra match ban. Juventus nearly went through. It's a bit like that Man City versus Liverpool sort of goal the other week. And Jonathan Wilson said afterwards, well, what if goal difference becomes a really important sort of factor in the title race? So I think that there is
another man who isn't a bore.
Exactly. So just going back, I'm going to I will disagree with the rest of the panel, though, in terms of I perfectly see why it was a yellow card, and sort of felt like it was the right decision. And the only reason I would say that is that if you offer carte blanche to people, inverted commas, to accidentally put their studs down the back of somebody, like, people will take advantage of that. We've seen people take advantage of all kinds of other things. So if you think that the game has to be stopped now when somebody has got a head injury, we are seeing players hold their head when there isn't head injury. There will be always somebody looking to bend whatever kind of laws there are. And I think we all know the type of defender. I'm not saying Lloyd Kelly is one of those, but I think we know the type of defender that would relish that opportunity to land in a position like that if they were allowed to, and it was just seen as kind of one of those things. So I sort of didn't think it was like a disgraceful decision against Lloyd Kelly, who's had a shocking time of it. Really, he wasn't very good in the first leg, was he? And
No.
he's cost the team. I know he would feel it's unlucky, but I felt like Juve, even though it was only 1-0 at the time, I felt like Juve had a really big opportunity to still overhaul that deficit. And as Lars said, like, they just ran out of legs, really. Otherwise, with 11, I think they would have done it.
I think they blew it, actually. They had 9 good chances that they missed. Gatti, Locatelli, Conchachao, Yildiz missed 3 decent chances.
Zagrova in extra
twice.
time, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think they will look at that. Despite the deficit on the first leg, I think they should have gone through.
Yeah, there's a Grover one. It's the big one, isn't it? McKennie just sets him up, and it's just a per for a left footer, just to bend that in the corner.
Max, can I just have a bit of a shout out for McKennie, because I know we've got a lot of US listeners. Like, not only has he got an extraordinary sort of long throw, because he can throw it as far as kind of the delapse, but it's at pace as well. So that might be a sort of something that they really look to use, I think, the US come the World Cup. But this is somebody that started the first leg up front and the second leg at left back, and is definitely sort of influential for Juventus in all manner of positions. I think he's somebody been waiting quite a while for him to really show his best. Been a lot of talk about him for a long time, and I feel like we really are seeing the best of McKennie now, albeit he maybe should have taken responsibility with that Zagrova when he sort of tried to do the assist rather than the goal. But a big player for Juventus, and somebody that US will really need to step up come the World Cup.
Shout out to Weston McKennie. Yes,
Yeah.
Lars.
I also, just on Galatasaray, they are such a mystery box of a team. Like, you really never know what you'll get with them, which I think makes them, like, the expected fun is sky high. And they are, like, if you're not sure which game to watch on a weeknight Champions League spread like this, you're not going to go too far wrong by watching the Galatasaray game. Because if you look at the team now, there's really good players here. Like Osimhen, obviously, we can have the Osimhen shouldn't be in Turkey discussion. I think it's been had a few times, but certainly he is incredibly good. Like he would improve almost all. I mean, there are not many teams in Europe who couldn't use a number 9 of that quality. You've got Leroy Sané coming off the bench, and he's got great. We don't have, just look at the lineup. There's so many like genuinely brilliant players here, and I keep waiting for them to grow up and like become like a serious team that can stay organized and behave seriously. And they've done like the 1-0 win against Liverpool in the group stage was very composed and very organized. And I was like, yes, Galatasaray, this is what we want to see. But then they also had like the disastrous 5-1 defeat to Frankfurt. They were really poor against Union Saint-Gilloise. But again, they blew Juventus apart in the first leg, and then they come here with a 3-goal lead and are dreadful for so long. There's really no telling what happens when Galatasaray start a football match, and I think that is, as a neutral, that's an admirable quality.
Sure. So on that, we've got Liverpool or Tottenham will play Galatasaray or Atleti. Lars, what's the perfect setup of those football matches?
They can beat both of them, and they can lose 6-0 to both of them. I swear to God, there's no telling with Galatasaray. We probably want them to play Spurs, I think.
Yeah.
Just to be the chaos off. They have beaten Liverpool earlier in the season. And Liverpool are still like working through some stuff. I think anyone who saw them against Nottingham Forest at the weekend will feel that they're not out of the woods, as it were. But maybe because they've played before, I think them against Spurs would be more like the expected fun would be through the roof, I think.
Right. And well, let's see. When's that draw? Is that tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning.
Friday.
Tomorrow morning. Friday morning. Okay. Well, I look forward to it. And that'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll begin with Real Madrid. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Real 2, Benfica 1. And it feels fitting, Barry, that Vinícius Júnior was the key man in this game.
Yeah, he scored the decisive goal. Did a dance by the corner flag, quite pointedly, which went down very well with the Bernabeu crowd. Gianluca Prestiani, who's accused of racially abusing him in the first leg, travelled with Benfica despite having a suspension, which his club appealed. So he watched from the team hotel, I believe. Jose Mourinho was suspended from this game. He was nowhere to be seen. There's talk he might have watched on a tablet in the team bus. Real Madrid went into this game, no Bellingham, no Mbappe, no Dean Hussein. So it could have gone badly for them, but they got through it, and deservedly so. And I suspect there won't be too many people sorry to see the back of Benfica after what happened in the first leg.
Yeah, I think, Lars, they weren't convincing Real in this game.
No,
because Benfica had chances, didn't they?
No, I was, and this is the game I was trying to like main screen. It was quite bad. Like just as the quality of at one point, the co-commentator just went, "This is really poor play here now." Like there was just a sequence of some really loose passes from both teams, and there was this is not like both the point we're at in the tournament and the quality of a lot of the individual players on the field. You're just kind of expecting slightly better football than what was happening here, and Courtois had to come up with some pretty big saves here. I think it's hard to feel a lot of sympathy for Benfica as an institution after the last week. And of course that they're coached by Jose and all this sort of stuff. But just like completely on the balance of play, I think they'll feel a little bit unfortunate not to actually have gone past Real Madrid here. Because Real Madrid looked very gettable on the night. I know Real Madrid are missing some guys in defence. Militao's not there. Huijsen's not there. But they were not impressive really at all, and they look like a team who might get into big trouble against more capable opponents. That said, Mbappe was not available. He will be back, and if you have Vinícius Júnior and Mbappe in your front line, you can put 3, 4, 5 goals past anyone on any day.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not. They're. If we talk about teams, I mean, in the aftermath of Bodo Glimt on Tuesday night, I've heard and used the phrase "more than the sum of their parts" so many times. Real Madrid currently not more than the sum of their parts, distinctly less than the sum of their parts. And this was not an impressive performance at all.
The midfield seems to be an issue, Mark, with Real Madrid, and it's hard to replace Toni Kroos, right? And Luka Modric. That is a hard thing to do, right?
It is. I mean, look, in terms of talent, Valverde, Tchouaméni, Camavinga, all excellent footballers, and do different things as well. So you feel like the balance and the way they play should be, it should work, really. I think what they do lack is somebody to control a game, and that is what Toni Kroos particularly
It's never
did
calm,
so well.
is it?
It's not, and they're not. Yeah, they were after Zubimendi, weren't they? I think that was the player that Xabi Alonso wanted, and I think Real Madrid, spent their money elsewhere. But maybe there is somebody that just plays that role that they are lacking, that can just knit the team together. Because Valverde, I think he could possibly do that, but he wants to break forward. Tchouaméni is more of a destroyer, despite his lovely goal, and Camavinga. I'm still trying to work out exactly what Camavinga is. I just know he's a very good footballer, but I don't know kind of what position he should play, and maybe that's been a problem for him as well, because he has played at left back, and they've tried to play him as the sort of defensive midfielder. So that there is definitely a balance issue. I would also say as well that there's an Mbappe issue in terms of this knee injury, because like Real Madrid are trying to get him through, and I don't know how many times have we seen this where you try and do that and eventually it needs an operation, or it needs like a longer term sort of fix than what we've got. And there is a World Cup, just on the horizon as well. So like that's a tricky one for Arbeloa to manage there, and they're in a title race in Spain. So like it's hard to know sort of which games Mbappe should play in and which ones he shouldn't. But he's clearly not at 100%, and I'm not sure rest just kind of is what's required here, like a sort of a midweek off. I think he maybe needs a longer period, but Real Madrid are not in that position where they can afford to be without Mbappe. Just saying all that, like for the last decade or more, people have said this about Real Madrid about this stage of the competition, and then they wake up, they get a big tie. Courtois will do something amazing, they'll get through a game, and then all of a sudden they start to look good. But as it stands at the moment, while you'd still rather play Bodo Glimt than Real Madrid in that little section, they're not as you shouldn't be fearing them like as this mighty Real Madrid, I don't think. So I agree with Lars on that.
So that sort of controlling midfielder thing, that is what Camavinga looked like he was going to become when he was coming through Rennes, when he was just a teenager, and he looked like that was his role. But then when he came to Real Madrid, of course, both Kroos and Modric were there, so he was used more as his athleticism was utilized, and he was played at left back, and I guess they just don't trust him to do that kind of job. And I also do wonder if this is part of the idea between bringing Arda Güler into a deeper role, hoping that he will develop into that sort of player, because he seems more like an attacking midfielder, even almost a second striker to me, but they're playing him more in midfield. But that seems to be an issue. This is like top class fence sitting by me, but I do also just think all of these things will stop mattering if you've got Vinícius and Mbappe running at you. Like having talents like that, it makes it harder maybe sometimes to create a coherent 11, because for reason, but the individual quality they represent and the devastating speed and the finishing prowess, you still, like I said, I would fear them, like contrary to what Langdon, having just said that they didn't play well and there's so many things that don't work, I would still be terrified if my team had to play against them, because that's just kind of how that works.
So Real Madrid are on the other side of Bodo. So Real or Bodo will play Man City or Sporting in the last 16.
Just on the Camavinga thing, there was quite a sickening mid-air collision between him and Asensio in this game. I presume we'll get further updates today.
Yeah,
neither of them looked in great nick.
Yeah, Arbeloa said it's not as serious as first thought after the game, okay. I think. But not entirely sure. Baz, you watched PSG Monaco. What did you finish 2-2? So PSG through 5-4 on aggregate. What did you make of it?
I thought Monaco were a bit unlucky, to be honest. So basically, they played 42 minutes of the first leg with 10 men. And 32 minutes of this one with 10 men. So, combined 74 minutes of the two legs they were down to 10 men. I thought they started really well. Mamadou Koulibaly missed a sitter. It was him who got sent off later. Thilo Kehrer sent a glancing header from a free kick, very narrowly wide. Florent Balogun had a looping effort from outside the box, which landed off on the roof of the net. I think it might have taken a nick off Marquinhos. And then they took the lead through Magnus Aliouche. And then Koulibaly got sent off, and that's when the wheels came off, because PSG equalised immediately from the free kick. And then a Hakimi shot from distance was just parried into the path of Kvaratskhelia, and he scored the decisive goal to put PSG 5-3 up on aggregate. So Monaco pulled one back, and then Wout Faes had that chance we were talking about right at the death. The ball was on a plate for him to head it past the PSG keeper, and he just didn't make contact with it. I think it was a bad miss. Like, you got at least get your head to it, Yeah, and we've seen him score decent headers in the Premier League.
At both ends. At both
well,
ends.
yes.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be harsh on about Fast, but you're right. He sort of jumps in a funny way, just gets the timing wrong, and it is a good chance. I suppose, Lars, we talk about Real Madrid not quite being at a Real Madrid level, and you sort of get that same sense with PSG as well.
Yeah, it's a funny one. We're just going to forget about this tie, I think, very, very quickly, because both of the nights, it was one of the less interesting games, I think, of the evening. And Monaco is a team that just not many people care about. But it should be underlined just how close PSG were to going out here in terms of going two behind in the first leg. And then Monaco just picking up an bizarre, stupidly... You got a red card that should have been avoided, and it turned the game, and it helped turn the game anyway. And then here, you are one Wout Faes header away from being knocked out. This is kind of a little bit alarming. I do still think, if I had to make a pick now, I still probably back PSG to win the tournament, just because a lot of the other big teams have got stuff going on, and that their ceiling is super high, but this was kind of alarming a little bit.
Yeah, I suppose, to be a pedant, it was a Wout Faes header from going to extra time, unless Wout Faes headers are worth two. Away
maybe
goals
they
don't
should
count
be
anymore. But yeah, did you, Mark? You looked poised to say something interesting.
First of all, I think PSG, one of the problems this season is in the knockout stages last season, they were relentless off the ball and would win the ball back. And that would high up the pitch, and that would kind of take the pressure off the defence, because the midfield and the forwards were, just causing so many errors for opposition teams. It's easier to score. It feels easier to score against PSG this season. They've, Donnarumma's departed. Chevalier was signed, did not play well at all, and has now been dropped. So maybe they don't look as solid in goal as they did last season. But there's a greater vulnerability to their defence, which I don't think is just individually the defenders, but the way that the midfield and attack is or kind of isn't working. They're only a couple of points clear in France at the moment, which is a surprise. I think it would be a surprise to anybody that kind of, if you've not looked at the league on table for much of this season, you would assume it was already done, but it's not, and they've been poor by their standards domestically. They've had a few injuries as well, and I do wonder about that Club World Cup back from the summer. They reached the final of that. They'd obviously played all the way through, having won the Champions League as well, and just been harder for Luis Enrique to get the best 11 out on the pitch on a consistent basis. And I think last season, in those knockout stages, you could almost reel off kind of 10 of the players that would start, and hasn't quite been like that this season. That said, they've still got such a frighteningly good attack, but they don't look as good as they were last season. But it wasn't until about this time last season that they really came alive. And for one final point on Akliouche, PSG have been looking to sign the best French young players. I mean, he's definitely one of them, and might end up at PSG or a similar standard team next season. I think he showed his quality in this tie.
we were talking about with Real Madrid that any game they go into, Mbappe, Vinícius, those dudes can score some goals out of nothing, and then Courtois does something incredible, and then you win. And all the other fuzzy stuff in midfield and team structure and all this nerd nonsense that people like me care about doesn't matter anymore. The PSG had the same thing, right? With Kvaratskhelia can do stuff on his own. Dembele was incredible last season, like all these players, and then Donnarumma could just completely save shots that are supposed to go in. One of those parts of the equation is missing now. Like whether it's Chevalier or Safanov, it's just not the same. And that in the knockout games especially, I think that can really hurt them.
Yeah, and I suppose when he was signed and everyone was for City and everyone was like, why have Man City bought this big oaf who can't kick the ball? You know, it turns out he's really good. Thank you for your voice note yesterday, Lars, reflecting in the glory of Bodo Glimt. James says, I know very little about Norwegian player squad inclusion. You and me both, James. But a Google search tells me that only 2 Bodo players are in the national squad. Yeah. I'd be interested to hear from Lars whether players from Norway's domestic league are well represented in the national team or whether there are just too many better players.
It's a real throwback to the 90s, this, because we used to have this as well. So we had this glorious period in the 90s under Egil Olsen when we qualified for 2 World Cups, and at once we were second in the FIFA rankings and the national team was really going well. At the same time as Rosenborg were playing regularly in the Champions League group stages and we're creating upsets, but there were always not that many Rosenborg players in the national team, and that was always a source of debate and schisms. This is starting to happen again now, because there are, Patrik Berg in midfield is always going to be in. Jens Petter Hauge will have to be in the squad at least. I think definitely one of the centre halves, because we have an issue at centre half going into the World Cup. Odin Bjørntoft, I think after that game, has to be considered, and of course there's only one. There was. Kasper Høe up front is Danish, but almost the entire team is Norwegian, except the goalkeeper, Nikita Heikin. I think there are efforts being made to try to get him Norwegian citizenship, because I think he qualifies for it. He's, I believe he's Russian-Israeli is his background, but he's been in Norway for quite a long time, and if someone could dig up a Norwegian passport for him, I think he'd start for us in the World Cup, so there's some of that going on.
Well, you could always go for Anthony Niemi, but, there we go.
He's finished, as we know.
He's finished, Max.
No, he's not. He's 53. Tonight, Celtic in the Europa League, they're 4-1 down. They go to Stuttgart, so that's not easy. Forest.
Sorry, Max, just
Yes.
You, in your Feedback Corner on Monday, we didn't address this, but there was some shocking VAR decisions in the Scottish Premiership last weekend. Probably the most egregious, although Rangers fans may beg to differ, but was Aaron Trusty getting sent off for a nothing foul, which the ref spotted. And it was basically someone grabbed Trusty's arm at a corner and he slapped it away. And the ref went and had a word with him and whoever it was that grabbed his arm, and that was the end of the matter until VAR intervened, re-refereed the game and got Trusty sent off. And Martin O'Neill went off on one about this in his press conference yesterday, which it was a touch of old man yells at cloud about it, but I couldn't have agreed more with him. He basically said, look, there will come a point that referees will just be superfluous to the game and everything will be reffed from I don't know where the Scottish equivalent of Stockley Park is, Max Stockley Park. But I was applauding Martin.
So then if he's not yet, then it's not old man yelling at cloud, it's just old man yelling at middle-aged man is sort of fine, isn't it? And I do like whenever managers say that, they always traduce Stockley Park from this sort of glitzy office into just a caravan, don't they? That's what they have to say. They have to say just in a shed 3,000 miles away. But yeah, I think we're all agreed, just get rid of it. Nobody who wants it apart from IFAB. We've already done IFAB. Maybe some people do, but I don't. That's Forest 3-0 up on Fenerbahce, and Palace 1-1 with Zrinjski Mostar. So it's interesting, Mike, what's happening at Palace, and because they still could and probably should win the Conference League, I guess. I
would have said that at the start of the season. I'm not sure now. they'd still be among the favourites. Just Premier League wages, Premier League players. You are going to have an advantage in the Conference League, but. And it would be a big deal. And Crystal, it was a big deal when they won the FA Cup. Glasner was talking about this in his press conference yesterday, that Palace have tried for 120 years to win every competition they've been in, and they haven't been that successful at doing so. It just doesn't feel right, though, and I'm not sure how that changes. There was a banner, recently sort of wanting him, or from the Palace fans wanting Glasner to go. Like, he feels like he's begging to be sacked. And just
I know.
say, like,
I'm just trying to think, what else can he do? What else can he do? Like, he's had a go at the board, the fans.
Yeah,
did he just turn around and face the wrong way?
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard to know what could come next. Maybe sort of come on, do a slide tackle or something, and sort of end in disgrace that way. But yeah. I don't know. They should win it, just in terms of like that, like I say, like the financial advantage they've got. But it just, I'd almost be surprised if they did, because I just don't like what they're serving up at the moment, really, from a footballing point of view, and it would go against the grain of kind of what a club's supposed to be successful if they do go on and win it.
Yeah, he could start himself or his kids. I don't know. Just saying. Fiorentina, Strasbourg amongst the favourites as well. Yes, Lars?
It's just interesting with Glasner, I want to stick around with, because I think I've read most of the things he's said over the last couple of weeks. And the funny thing is, I feel like pretty much everything he says is factually correct. Like, when he starts bringing up, like, this is actually a very good season for us, and historically this is... But there is an element of just kind of saying the quiet part out loud with him, and it's also timing as well, because obviously they've won 2 in the last 16, I think is the record is. If you're a Palace fan, you've gone through this sort of cold, miserable English winter, and you've paid a lot of money for tickets, and the manager has said he's leaving, like, I'm out of here, like, this place is beneath me, peasants, like this, and that is not the time for him to start delivering home truths about where the club actually belongs. Like, it just comes off really badly. But it's an odd one where, like, when he says, actually, we've been very good, and even being 13th is kind of good, it is objectively true, right? Even if it's not what you necessarily want to hear as a Palace fan right now.
Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Coventry won 2-1 at Sheffield United, came from behind at Bramall Lane. So they are now 5 points clear of Middlesbrough in second and 9 points clear of Millwall in third. Millwall had a brilliant win over Birmingham, 3-0. Well done to them. Birmingham are, where are they? 10th, 5 points outside the playoffs. But yeah, Millwall on 59 points in third place. Norwich beat Sheffield Wednesday. Stoke beat Oxford. Sheffield Wednesday down already. Looks like Oxford were going with them. Baz, it's worth mentioning Sheffield Wednesday. It's that when Chansiri left, and there was that sort of, they had on the big screen, rebooting, he's gone, and people were watching the live stream of his name being taken off the seats. You sort of thought, okay, they'll probably go down, but there's hope. But there's been another disappointing moment for them.
Yeah, they rebooted, and now they're in a serious buffer. So they've gone down, as everyone knew they would. I think the earliest relegation in EFL history. But it looked like they were going to be taken over by a consortium led by this professional poker player called James Board. Every time I see his name in print, I think it's James Bond, and it's slightly disconcerting. As him, a German crypto casino owner, and a Jordanian businessman. I'm saying nothing.
Okay.
Anyway, they had bid, I think it's 40 million for the club, and they got a due diligence report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, the super accountants, and decided they'd bid, I think, 8 to 10 million quid too much. So they've withdrawn their offer. So it's back to square one for Sheffield Wednesday, whose fans are now unhappy as to why the administrators gave this shower preferred bidder status. But they won I think it was a 6-way auction. So I presume Wednesday fans will be hoping that one of the other 5 will now step into the breach, but it's going to take time. They'll have to deal with the football regulator who will be in position by the time this goes through. And Mr. Board and his associates, they hadn't passed the fit and proper persons test at the time they pulled out of the bidding, which is not to say they wouldn't have, but they hadn't. And whoever else steps in now will, if someone steps in, will have to pass that as well. So it could be a very time-consuming process. And yeah, still loads and loads of uncertainty around Hillsborough, despite the fact that they thought they had a new lease of life.
It's a real shame for that. I mean, absolutely devastating for those fans and not important. But if your chairman is called Board, do you sing sack the board or just sack board? Which do you do? In the Premier League, so in the title race, Leeds play Manchester City. That's the late game on Saturday. And then on Super Sunday, Arsenal play Chelsea. I suppose on paper, Mark, Arsenal-Chelsea is the most interesting of the fixtures.
Yeah, absolutely. Standout game. If you go back to the sort of League Cup tie they had recently, that second leg, Chelsea shut Arsenal down for sort of most of that 90 minutes. It was only right at the end that Arsenal got the winner, but they were already sort of one goal up at that point, and Rossini was criticised in some quarters for his defensive approach to that game. I feel like that's the right way to go about it again, though, from Chelsea's point of view. It's just whether that they can do that. I always feel like there's one mistake in them. Arsenal bounced back very well from the Wolves game against Spurs on Sunday. Physically looked very strong. I think a lot will depend on kind of that game on Saturday, because City's away record's not amazing, and Leeds are on a fantastic run, albeit that Arsenal went there recently and won very convincingly. That looks like kind of almost like a more difficult game, I would say, or as difficult a game for City as what Arsenal against Chelsea is. And it's definitely not a gimme for Guardiola's team.
No, I think you're right. And actually, Lars, what's interesting is we said that about Arsenal's trip to Leeds. We were like, well, this isn't an... And Arsenal went there and just said, look, we're really good at this. And I think it's still true that the sort of floodlight law of Leeds have won every game where the floodlights come on, right? Ooh. I mean, okay, it probably come on at 4:30 on a Saturday, but so it's a late kickoff on a Saturday, 5:30, not 8, but they are brilliant under the lights at Elland Road. Make of that what you will, Lars. But it should be fascinating.
So Elland Road under the lights is the new Tuesday night at Stoke. This is the new thing.
Yes, I don't know. It's different, I think, because I think isn't a Tuesday night in Stoke because it's unpleasant, and I don't think it's unpleasant under the lights.
That's the whole thing about this Leeds team. They're really big and strong and physical. Like they are quite intense. Like you don't want to go into a 50-50 with Stack. That's not fun.
No,
he's very big. I
agree with you. But there's a romance to Elland Road under the lights.
Britannia on a wet Tuesday is more of a knee trembler up against the bus shelter.
Okay.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for your input so far in this.
Some places that is considered very romantic, Barry. That's
Anyway, that's the title race. And then, Chelsea are in the race for those Champions League places. Chelsea are in that race for the Champions League spots, along with Villa, Manchester United and Liverpool. Villa go to Wolves on Friday night. Manchester United host Crystal Palace. That is on Sunday at 2:00, and Liverpool West Ham is a Saturday 3:00. So you imagine Villa, Liverpool and Man United would all win those, Barry.
You would on the face of it. I think Wolves might give Villa some problems. There's the geography. It's a derby of sorts. I know it's not the big Villa derby, but Wolves have significantly improved under Rob Edwards without necessarily getting the results or wins. I think they'll get a big win at some point this season. This could be it. Having said that, Villa could just as easily turn up and absolutely slap them down. But I would see Wolves, without the ball being kicked, I could see Wolves giving Villa more problems than West Ham will give Liverpool or Palace will give Man U.
And from a Spurs point of view, Mark, hope West Ham lose. Tottenham go to Fulham in the relegation fight. Tottenham go to Fulham, and Forest go to Brighton.
Yeah, Yeah.
How's your hope? How's your hope? Yeah.
Well,
that was such a sort of, that wasn't even, it was just anguish, that Mark.
I mean, they haven't won a game this year, so in terms of in the Premier League, so it's hard to fancy them to win any game at the moment. Confidence is at absolute rock bottom. Like Danso and Porro have returned to training this week, which I think will help in a number of ways. Porro being one of Tottenham's better players, and also if Tudor wants to play with a back three, having three centre backs is at least a start to being able to do that. That should help in that regard. But I don't feel like enough people kind of outside of sort of real kind of close Tottenham watchers. I know that Max and Lars, you sort of would watch more than most as well. But like they've been in this relegation trouble, I think, for a while, definitely since they lost to West Ham, and it's only about now that people are starting to come to sort of terms or grips with the fact that they really could be relegated, and like it's just hard to think that they can win any game at the moment. I'm sure the way football is, you do just win a game eventually. Even Burnley have done that, but like the team is not in a good place at all, and the roar that went up around the concourse when Liverpool scored in the 97th minute against Nottingham Forest on Sunday would tell you that just about every Tottenham fan knows the severity of this relegation battle, because it's almost like relying on other teams to not be good enough to catch them rather than Tottenham taking care of their own business.
Yeah, good. I mean,
so they have in late March, start of April, they have this run of playing Forest at home, Sunderland away, Brighton at home, and Wolves away. That feels to me like the 4 games where Spurs will probably find like 1 or 2 wins, which should be enough, kind of depending on what West Ham do between now and the end of the season. And I kind of think everything between now and then is just Igor Tudor figuring stuff out, trying to get people healthy again. My expectations are not high. And actually, my takeaway from the Arsenal game, honestly, was Arsenal did try to mess that up. Like, they did their best. Like, they were the best team by a lot. But after they went ahead, Declan Rice just gave away a goal for no reason. In the same way Arsenal have been giving away goals for no reason against Wolves, against Brentford. But unlike Wolves and Brentford, Spurs were not good enough to, take advantage of that. The Spurs are just not. Yeah, it is quite dreadful at the moment. And the relegation form has been happening arguably even since before the season. Second half of last season, Ange would say, well, we were saving ourselves for Europe, but they finished 17th ahead of 3, unusually bad teams in the historical perspective. So this is more than a year now of looking like a team that, is right near the bottom of this league.
In Scotland, Baz Hart's host Aberdeen, so you'd expect them to win that. And then it is the Old Firm on Sunday at Ibrox at midday. And that is, I mean, they're always big. Maybe it's hyperbole to say one of the biggest for a while. But, I mean, it's great for Hearts that one of those sides at least will drop points.
Yeah, one presumes Hearts wants a draw, and they'll increase their lead with a win over Aberdeen. What Hearts really don't need to do is focus too much on events in Glasgow and just take care of their own game, win that, and then just sit back and enjoy the Old Firm.
All right, well, that'll do for today. I've had a nice time. Thanks, everybody.